probably didn't happen in their memory, which is so important in criminal cases. Because people will, I even wrote a note here. Like, I can imagine when someone is seeing something or think they're seeing something so traumatic, their brain might be doing some crazy stuff and making it, oh, well, you saw them do this, but really they didn't. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, that's part of it, sure. In some of the cases, there is a question of there really was a crime, but the question is who committed the crime.
Mm,
And a witness to the crime might be asked to make an identification, go to a lineup, look at a set of photographs. And sometimes these witnesses make mistakes.
right.
So we know from some of the databases of known wrongful convictions, innocent people who've been convicted of crimes they didn't do, that a common reason is faulty human memory.
Wow.
So I like to talk about those findings when I motivate my students to want to learn a little bit more about memory and the
Right.
workings of memory.
Right. I'm fascinated by memory for multiple reasons. I'm actually, side note, I've been noticing a lot of cognitive issues with myself. I'm 33, and there's sometimes where I'm like, I have to describe a word, and then my fiance will be like, "Yeah, orange," or you know what I mean, like, or something like that. And I went to a neurologist recently. I'm trying to get some tests done just because I'm thinking, like, I don't know if it's stress induced or a lot of workload or whatever, but memory is like crazy because I used to be so sharp, right? My grandfather, he passed of Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff like that. So I've always been kind of interested in it. And I'm so glad that like, that's kind of like your main kind of focus. And you want to teach your students on like how to kind of like look into that stuff. Are your students like future like prosecutors, investigators, stuff like that?
Well, I do teach a course on eyewitness testimony, and many of the students who take that course do want to go on to law school or do want to go work for police departments
Mhm.
or well, become prosecutors or defense attorneys. So I see students with that kind of interest. But you mentioned your grandfather with Alzheimer's, dementia, and so on. That that of course is just a terrible situation, and for anybody who's had to experience that with a loved one. And oftentimes if I tell somebody that I study memory, that's the first
Mm,
thing they want to talk about. But as you know, there's a situation where people have a loss of memory. In Alzheimer's, a severe loss.
right.
Maybe your grandfather couldn't even recognize you anymore.
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yep. I was the only one he actually could recognize. He thought my sister was my mom at her age. It's like he backtracked. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Tough disease.
But that and there are plenty of really good people who are studying Alzheimer's and trying to figure out treatments for trying to deal with that awful situation. But
Right.
again, I study when people are remembering things that happen rather than they can't remember anything that
Right.
did happen.
Makes sense. Yeah.